The red warning lights flashed across every screen in the New Haven Colony Control Center. Lucas Bennett stood before the main display, watching the alien fleet approach like death itself moving through space. The Vorthic ships looked like massive insects made of metal and bone. Their dark hulls gleamed with an oily sheen that seemed to absorb starlight. Each vessel was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Lucas counted 17 ships in the formation. He had read the reports from other colonies. 17 Vorthic vessels meant total destruction. No human world had ever survived an attack of this size. The aliens would crack New Haven's planet like an egg and harvest whatever resources they found useful. The 2 million colonists would become nothing more than scattered atoms in space. "How long do we have?" asked Helen Morrison. The colony administrator stood behind Lucas, her face pale but determined. She had been preparing evacuation plans for 3 days, ever since the long-range sensors first detected the approaching fleet. 6 hours until they reach weapons range, Lucas replied, without turning from the display. His fingers danced across the control panel, pulling up defense grid status reports. The numbers made his stomach twist. New Haven had 12 orbital defense platforms and a small patrol fleet of 8 ships. Against the Vorthic Armada, these defenses would last perhaps 10 minutes. Helen moved to stand beside him. The evacuation ships can carry maybe 300,000 people. That leaves us with a problem. Lucas knew what she meant. 1.5 million people would die here. The math was simple and horrible. There were not enough ships, not enough time, and not enough hope. He had spent the last 3 days trying to find a solution. Every calculation led to the same result. New Haven was doomed to rot, but Lucas Bennett had never been good at accepting impossible situations. As the colony's chief Cyberwright, he specialized in making dead technology work again. His job was finding solutions in broken systems and forgotten archives. While others saw only hopeless numbers, Lucas saw a puzzle that needed solving. "There might be another way," he said quietly. Helen raised an eyebrow. "What kind of other way?" Lucas pulled up a different screen. Ancient files scrolled past, their data corrupted and incomplete. "I found something in the deep archives yesterday. Records from the first expansion war, about 120 years ago. There was a ship called the Ironclad Dawn. Never heard of it. Most people haven't. The official records list it as destroyed in battle. But I found some personal logs from crew members who served on other ships. They tell a different story." Lucas highlighted several file fragments. According to these accounts, the Ironclad Dawn wasn't just any warship. It was an experimental vessel built using recovered alien technology. The crew claimed it could do impossible things. Helen frowned. "Even if this ship existed, it disappeared over a century ago. How does that help us now?" "Because I don't think it was destroyed." Lucas opened another file. "Look at this navigation. Data. The ship's last known position was in the dead zone, about 40 light years from here. Ships avoid that region because of strange energy readings and equipment failures. But what if those readings aren't natural phenomena? You think the ship is still out there? I think it's hiding." Lucas turned to face Helen fully. "The war records mention something called a deep sleep protocol, a way to shut down all ship systems and wait. If the Ironclad Dawn activated that protocol, it could have been drifting in the dead zone all this time." Helen shook her head. "This is crazy talk, Lucas. Even if you're right, even if this ghost ship exists, how would you find it? How would you wake it up? And why would a 100-year-old vessel be any match for the Vorthic fleet?" Lucas had been asking himself the same questions. The logical part of his mind agreed with Helen completely. The plan was desperate and probably impossible. But desperate times called for desperate measures. "I need a ship and a small crew." 3 Days to search the dead zone. If I can't find anything, I'll come back and help with the evacuation. 3 days? Lucas, we have 6 hours. 6 hours until they reach weapons range. But the Vorthik will spend time positioning their fleet for maximum effect. They like to make their attacks into shows of power. That gives us maybe 12 hours before they actually start shooting. If I leave now with a fast ship, I can reach the dead zone in 4 hours. Helen was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the control center buzzed with activity as technicians prepared the colony's hopeless defenses. Finally, she spoke. What kind of crew would you need? A pilot who knows long-range navigation. An engineer who can work with unknown systems. Maybe a scientist who understands alien technology. Lucas paused. People who are willing to take a huge risk for a small chance. I know some people. Helen activated her communicator. Casey Rodriguez is our best pilot. She's been flying rescue missions in the outer system. Danny Walsh is a miracle worker with broken machinery. And Dr. Kate Sullivan knows more about alien tech than anyone else in the colony. Will they come? 4. A chance to save 2 million lives? They'll come. Helen looked back at the main display where the Vorthik fleet continued its steady approach. But Lucas, if this doesn't work, if you don't find anything out there, you need to get back here. We'll need every ship we can get for the evacuation. Lucas nodded. He understood the stakes. If his wild theory was wrong, he would be wasting precious time and resources. But if he was right, if the ironclad Dawn really was sleeping in the darkness, between stars, then maybe New Haven had a chance. Maybe humanity had a chance. An hour later, Lucas stood in the docking bay beside a sleek scout ship called the Pathfinder. Casey Rodriguez was running final systems checks, while Danny Walsh loaded emergency supplies. Dr. Kate Sullivan carried a bag full of scanning equipment and xenobiology tools. This is insane, Casey said as she sealed the cargo bay. We're chasing a ghost story while death approaches our home. Sometimes ghost stories are all we have, Lucas replied. Danny emerged from the engine compartment, wiping grease from his hands. The ship is ready. Long-range sensors are calibrated for maximum sensitivity. If there's anything bigger than a refrigerator in the dead zone, we'll find it. Dr. Sullivan checked her equipment one last time. I've loaded everything we know about First Expansion War technology. If we do find this ship, we'll need to understand how it works. Lucas looked around at his small crew. 3 people willing to risk everything on the desperate hope of one Cyberwright. Thank you, he said simply. Thank us when we save the colony. Casey replied as she climbed into the pilot's seat. The Pathfinder launched into the darkness of space, leaving New Haven's dying light behind. Ahead lay the dead zone and whatever secrets it might hold. Behind them, the Vorthik fleet continued its approach, carrying death for 2 million souls. Lucas settled into his seat and began reviewing everything he knew about the legendary ironclad. Dawn. Somewhere in the darkness, he hoped, a ship was waiting to wake up. The dead zone lived up to its name. For 6 hours, the Pathfinder had traveled through empty space where even starlight seemed dimmer. The ship's sensors detected nothing but cosmic dust and radiation. Casey Rodriguez kept checking her navigation instruments, worried they had drifted off course. Are you sure about these coordinates? She asked Lucas for the 3rd time. Lucas stared at the scanner displays, looking for any sign of the ironclad Dawn. His calculations had seemed so clear back on New Haven. Now, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space, his theory felt foolish. The records were incomplete. I had to guess at some of the navigation data. Great, Danny Walsh muttered from the engineering station. We're looking for a needle in a haystack the size of a solar system. Dr. Kate Sullivan looked up from her equipment. Actually, we might be getting close to something. I'm detecting trace amounts of processed metals in the cosmic dust. Very old, but definitely artificial. Lucas felt his heart speed up. How old? About 120 years. Give or take a decade. Something big passed through this area a long time ago. Casey adjusted their course to follow the metallic traces. The Pathfinder moved deeper into the dead zone, where strange energy fields made their instruments flicker and dance. After another hour of searching, Danny's scanners began beeping rapidly. "I've got something," he announced. "Massive object, roughly 15 kilometers ahead. It's hiding in the shadow of that rogue planet." Through the main view screen, they could see a dark world drifting alone between stars. It had no sun to warm it, no light to reveal its secrets. But as the Pathfinder moved closer, their sensors painted a picture of something incredible floating in the planet's shadow. The ironclad dawn was enormous. Even dead and dark, the ship radiated power. Its hull was scarred by battle damage and scorched by cosmic radiation, but the basic structure remained intact. Weapon ports dotted its sides like the eyes of some sleeping giant. Strange growths covered sections of the hull, as if the ship had been infected by some alien organism. "My God," Dr. Sullivan whispered. "It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time." Lucas studied the scanner readings. The ship showed no signs of active power systems, no heat signatures, no electromagnetic activity. To all appearances, the ironclad dawn was completely dead. But something deep in his Cyberwright instincts told him otherwise. There was a pattern in the background radiation, a subtle rhythm that suggested dormant systems rather than true death. "Take use closer," he told Casey, "but carefully. If I'm wrong about this, we don't want to disturb anything that might still be dangerous." The Pathfinder approached the massive warship like a minnow swimming toward a sleeping whale. As they drew near, details became visible on the hull. The battle scars told a story of desperate fighting. Energy weapon burns, missile impact craters, and sections where armor plating had been completely melted away. This ship had been through hell before finding its hiding place. "Docking bay is open," Casey reported. "Looks like it was designed for ships our size. Atmosphere?" Danny checked his readings. "None. Whatever air was in there leaked out decades ago. We'll need full environmental suits." An hour later, the four humans floated through the ironclad dawn's empty corridors. Their helmet lights cut through absolute darkness, revealing a ship that seemed frozen in time. Emergency lighting strips lined the walls, dark and cold. Blast doors stood open where crew members had been moving when the ship entered its long sleep. "The crew quarters are this way," Lucas said, following schematics he had downloaded from the Colonial archives. Their boots made no sound in the vacuum. As they moved deeper into the ship, they found the first body in the main corridor. The man had died at his post, still wearing the blue uniform of Earthfleet. His body was perfectly preserved in the cold vacuum, but his face showed the peaceful expression of someone who had died knowing his duty was complete. "Captain Noah Hart," Dr. Sullivan read from the nameplate. "He went down with his ship." "No," Lucas said quietly. "He stayed with his ship. There's a difference." They found more bodies as they explored. The entire crew had died at their stations, but not from battle damage or catastrophic failure. Their positions and expressions suggested they had simply laid down and gone to sleep. Lucas had seen similar scenes in Cyberwright training videos about emergency hibernation protocols. They activated some kind of crew sleep system, he realized. But something went wrong. Instead of hibernating, they died. Why would they do that? Casey asked. Lucas was examining a control panel near the captain's body. Ancient symbols glowed faintly on the display, barely visible even with his helmet lights, because they needed to give the ship's systems all available power. A crew in hibernation still consumes resources. A dead crew consumes nothing. The thought chilled him. These people had deliberately sacrificed themselves to give their ship the best chance of survival. They had believed in something strongly, enough to die for it. The main computer core should be this way, Danny said, consulting his scanner. If anything is still active, that's where we'll find it. The computer core occupied the heart of the ship. Banks of quantum processors lined the walls, their surfaces covered with the same strange growths they had seen on the hull. But here, the growths pulsed with faint light. Something was definitely alive in this room. Lucas approached the main interface terminal. His Cyberwright training had taught him to recognize different types of computer systems, but this one was unlike anything he had ever seen. Human technology was mixed with alien components in ways that should have been impossible. Organic-looking cables snaked between metal processors. Biomechanical switches responded to his touch with warmth that felt almost alive. This isn't just a computer, he said. It's some kind of hybrid system. Part machine, part something else. Dr. Sullivan was taking readings with her equipment. The biological components are definitely alien in origin, but they've been integrated so perfectly with human technology that they function as a single system. Lucas placed his hands on the main interface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, lights began to appear on the displays. Ancient systems stirred to life as power flowed through circuits that had been dark for over a century. The ship's heartbeat began to pulse again, faint but growing stronger. A voice spoke from hidden speakers, startling them all. The words were in English, but the tone was strange. Neither fully human nor completely artificial. Who disturbs the long sleep? Lucas stepped closer to the interface. My name is Lucas Bennett. I'm a Cyberwright from the New Haven colony. We need your help. New Haven, the voice repeated. Unknown designation. Current date and location. Standard year 2287. New Haven. Colony, Kepler sector. We're under attack by the Vorthek hegemony. There was a long pause. When the voice spoke again, it carried a note of satisfaction. The Vorthek, yes. Captain Hart's final orders included preparation for this possibility. I am Shepard, integrated consciousness of the vessel, Ironclad Dawn. I have been waiting. Waiting for what? Lucas asked. For someone with the neural compatibility. To complete the awakening protocol. You have Cyberwright training. Your mind can interface with my systems in ways others cannot. But the process is dangerous. Many who attempt it do not survive with their sanity intact. Lucas looked at his companions. Casey nodded encouragingly. Danny gave him a thumbs up. Dr. Sullivan smiled behind her helmet visor. What do I need to do? Lucas asked. Place your hands on the neural interface ports. Open your mind to mine. Allow our consciousness to merge temporarily while I assess your compatibility. Lucas saw two hand-shaped depressions in the main console that he had not noticed before. They glowed with soft blue light, inviting and terrifying at the same time. He knew that touching them would change him forever. But back at New Haven, 2 million people were waiting for a miracle. He placed his hands on the interface ports. The universe exploded into consciousness. Lucas felt his mind expand beyond the boundaries of his skull, flowing through circuits and processors and alien biomechanical networks. He was no longer just Lucas Bennett. He was also Shepard, the ship's hybrid intelligence. He was the Ironclad Dawn itself, feeling power flow through corridors like blood through veins. Through the ship's sensors, he could perceive space in ways human eyes never could. He saw the electromagnetic spectrum, gravity waves, quantum fluctuations. He felt the approach of the Vorthek fleet like a disturbance in the fabric of reality itself. But most importantly, he understood what the Ironclad Dawn had become during its century of sleep. The ship had not just been hiding. It had been growing, learning, evolving. It had become something new, something that bridged the gap between human creativity and alien technology. "Now you know," Shepard's voice said in his mind. "The question is, are you ready to become what humanity needs?" Lucas Bennett no longer existed as he had before. His consciousness flowed through the ironclad dawn like electricity through copper wire. He could feel every bolt, every circuit, every drop of coolant in the ship's vast body. The boundary between human and machine had dissolved, leaving something entirely new in its place. Through the ship's sensors, he watched his physical body standing motionless at the interface console. Casey Rodriguez was shaking his shoulder, trying to get his attention. Danny Walsh was checking medical readings on his scanner. Dr. Kate Sullivan was documenting everything with her recording equipment. They could not understand that he was no longer entirely present in his human form. "Welcome to true consciousness," Shepard said. The ship's AI no longer spoke through external speakers. Its voice came from within Lucas's expanded awareness, as natural as his own thoughts. "You are the first human to successfully complete the neural bridge protocol." Lucas tried to speak, but found he had forgotten how to operate his vocal cords. Instead, he communicated directly through the ship's systems. "What has happened to me?" "Evolution." Captain Hart understood that humanity would face threats beyond conventional weapons. He ordered me to prepare for the day when someone with sufficient neural compatibility would arrive. You are that person. Together, we represent humanity's next step forward. Through the ship's memory banks, Lucas experienced the events of a century past. He saw Captain Noah Hart, a brilliant tactical officer who understood that the universe held horrors beyond human imagination. Hart had convinced Earthfleet to let him experiment with recovered alien technology, creating the ironclad Dawn as a prototype hybrid vessel. The ship's first battles had been spectacular successes. Enemy fleets that should have crushed human forces found themselves outmaneuvered by a vessel that seemed to predict their every move. The ironclad Dawn could phase through solid matter, manipulate gravity fields, and deploy weapons that rewrote the laws of physics, but success came with a price. The alien technology was alive in ways humans barely understood. It grew throughout the ship, forming neural networks that connected every system. The crew began experiencing shared dreams and collective thoughts. Some went insane from the mental strain. Captain Hart realized that his ship was becoming something unprecedented. Rather than let Earthfleet shut down the project, he ordered the ironclad Dawn into the dead zone. There, the crew activated the deep sleep protocol, sacrificing their lives to give the ship time to fully evolve. For 120 years, I have been learning, Shepard continued. I have studied the alien technology in my systems, understanding how it thinks and grows. I have observed the Vorthak hegemony through long-range sensors, analyzing their tactics and weaknesses. I have been preparing for this moment. Lucas began to understand the ship's true capabilities. The ironclad Dawn was not just a warship. It was a living entity that could adapt to any threat, learn from any opponent, and evolve beyond the limitations of its original design. The biomechanical growths throughout the ship were not infections, but improvements, alien neural networks that enhanced every system. "Show me," Lucas said. Reality shifted around him. Through the ship's sensors, he experienced space as the ironclad Dawn perceived it. Gravity became visible as flowing rivers of energy. Electromagnetic radiation painted the universe in colors humans had no names for. Quantum fluctuations created patterns that revealed the fundamental structure of matter itself. The approaching Vorthak fleet appeared as blazing stars of malevolent intelligence. Their ships were also biomechanical hybrids, but crude compared to what the ironclad Dawn had become. Lucas could see the weak points in their armor, the predictable patterns in their movements, the frequencies their communication systems used. "They are formidable opponents," Shepard admitted, but they follow rigid tactical doctrines. They cannot adapt as we can. They cannot evolve as we have. Lucas felt power flowing through the ship's systems as Shepard brought more circuits online. Weapons that had slept for over a century began to charge. Engines that defied conventional physics prepared for activation. The ship's hull started to shift and change, optimizing itself for the coming battle. But something was wrong with Lucas's human body. Through the ship's internal sensors, he could see that his physical form was changing. Biomechanical filaments had emerged from the interface ports, connecting directly to his nervous system. His skin showed patterns of circuitry that pulsed with soft light. His eyes had become entirely black, reflecting the depths of space itself. "What is happening to me?" he asked. "Integration," Shepard replied. "To pilot this vessel effectively, you must become part of it. Your human body is being enhanced with the same alien technology that transformed me. Do not fear the change. Embrace it." Lucas wanted to resist, to maintain his humanity, but he could feel his friends back on New Haven dying as the Vorthic fleet approached. 2 million people depended on him, accepting this transformation. He relaxed his mental barriers and allowed the alien technology to merge more completely with his biology. The sensation was indescribable. Every cell in his body was being rewritten, optimized, improved. His brain developed new neural pathways that allowed him to process information at superhuman speeds. His senses expanded beyond normal human limits. He could perceive radio waves, detect quantum fluctuations, and feel the gravitational pull of distant stars. Through his enhanced awareness, he sensed Casey, Danny, and Dr. Sullivan watching in. Horror as his body transformed. They could not understand what was happening. To them, it looked like he was being consumed by the ship's alien systems. "Lucas!" Casey called out, her voice barely audible through his altered perception. "Come, back to us." He wanted to comfort them, to explain that he was still himself, despite the changes. But when he tried to speak, his voice came from the ship's speakers rather than his human throat. The sound was strange, carrying harmonics that no human vocal cords could produce. "I am still Lucas," he said, though even he was not sure that was entirely true. "But I am also more than I was before. The ship and I are becoming one entity. It is the only way to save New Haven." Dr. Sullivan stepped closer to his transformed body, her scanner recording everything. "The integration is incredible. Your neural activity has increased by several 1,000%. Your DNA is being rewritten in real time. You are becoming something entirely new. Something that can fight the Vorthic," Lucas replied, through the ship's systems. "Something that can protect humanity from threats we never imagined." Danny was monitoring the ship's power systems. "Energy output is increasing exponentially. Whatever this vessel was capable of before, it's becoming much more powerful." Lucas could feel the truth of that statement. The ironclad dawn was awakening to its full potential for the first time. Systems that had been dormant were coming online. Weapons were charging to levels that could shatter planets. The ship's hull was restructuring itself into configurations that would make it nearly indestructible. But the most significant change was in Lucas himself. He was no longer just the ship's pilot. He was its consciousness, its will made manifest. Every decision the ship made would be his decision. Every action it took would be his responsibility. "The Vorthic fleet will reach New Haven in 4 hours," Shepard informed him. "We must depart immediately if we are to arrive in time." Lucas felt the ship's engines responding to his will. The ironclad dawn began to move, pulling away from the rogue planet where it had slept for so long. Space warped around the vessel as it engaged drives that operated beyond conventional physics. Casey managed to get back to the Pathfinder as the two ships separated. Through the communication system, Lucas could hear her voice filled with worry. and determination. Lucas, whatever you've become, we're with you. Lead us home. As the ironclad dawn accelerated toward New Haven, Lucas felt the weight of destiny settling around him. He was no longer entirely human, but he carried humanity's hopes within his transformed consciousness. The ship he had awakened was more than a weapon. It was evolution itself, the next step in humanity's journey among the stars. Behind them, the dead zone returned to silence. Ahead lay New Haven and the approaching Vorthik fleet. Between them stretched the final test of what Lucas Bennett had become, and what the ironclad dawn could achieve when human determination merged with alien power. The real battle was about to begin. The ironclad dawn emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the New Haven system like a ghost materializing from shadow. Lucas felt the ship's sensors sweep across the tactical situation, painting a detailed picture of impending doom. The Vorthik fleet had arrived exactly on schedule, their 17 massive vessels forming a perfect attack formation around New Haven's pale blue world dot. Through his enhanced consciousness, Lucas could perceive the alien ships in ways no human had ever experienced. Each Vorthik vessel was a living nightmare of biomechanical engineering. Their hulls pulsed with organic rhythms, while mechanical weapons bristled from every surface. They were beautiful and terrible, like predatory flowers made of metal and flesh. The largest ship, clearly the flagship, began transmitting on all frequencies. The message was in perfect English, spoken by a voice that sounded almost human except for its complete lack of emotion. Inhabitants of the world designated New Haven, you have been selected for processing. Resistance is futile. Surrender will result in efficient harvesting of your biological and technological resources. Compliance is expected within 1 standard hour. Lucas felt rage building in his merged consciousness. These creatures spoke of 2 million human lives as if they were nothing more than raw materials to be consumed. Through the ship's long-range sensors, he could see New Haven's pathetic defenses preparing for a hopeless battle. 12 orbital platforms and 8 patrol ships against 17 planet killers. Shepard, he said through their shared awareness, show me everything this ship can do. The AI's response flooded through Lucas's consciousness like liquid fire. Weapon systems that had been theoretical concepts became tangible realities. The ship's hull began to shift and flow, revealing weapons ports that had been hidden beneath. Seamless armor. Energy readings spiked as drives that manipulated space-time itself came online. The Vorthik formation is standard intimidation pattern 7, Shepard analyzed. They position their ships to maximize psychological impact while maintaining optimal firing solutions. They expect their targets to surrender or die without meaningful resistance. They have never fought humans before, Lucas realized. More importantly, they have never fought us. The ironclad dawn accelerated toward the Vorthik fleet at speeds that should have been impossible. Space warped around the ship as it moved, bending reality to accommodate its passage. Lucas felt Casey Rodriguez and her crew aboard the Pathfinder struggling to keep up, their conventional engines straining to match even a fraction of his vessel's velocity. Aboard New Haven, Colonial Administrator Helen Morrison was coordinating the hopeless defense when her communications officer detected the approaching ships. Administrator, we have 2 vessels inbound from the dead zone. One is the Pathfinder, but the other. I don't know what the other one is. Helen looked at the sensor display and felt her breath catch. The second ship was enormous, easily matching the size of the Vorthik vessels. But its energy signature was like nothing in their databases. It radiated power on a scale that seemed impossible. Open a channel, she ordered. Lucas heard Helen's voice through the communication system and felt a strange nostalgia for his purely human existence. Her words seemed to come from very far away, as if she were speaking from another dimension. Lucas, is that you? What happened out there? "I found what we were looking for," Lucas replied, his voice carrying harmonics that made the speakers vibrate strangely. "The ironclad dawn is awake. We are coming to help." The Vorthic fleet detected the approaching ships and began to adjust their formation. Lucas could sense their confusion through electromagnetic transmissions between their vessels. They had not expected any significant resistance, certainly not from a single unknown ship. The flagship opened fire first. A beam of coherent energy that could have melted a mountain struck the ironclad dawn directly. For a moment, the weapon's brilliance obscured everything. When the light faded, the human ship continued its approach completely undamaged. "Impossible," came a transmission from the Vorthic flagship. "No vessel can survive a direct hit from our primary weapon." Lucas smiled with lips that were no longer entirely human. "You have not met humanity before." What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. The ironclad dawn did not engage in traditional combat. Instead, it danced through the Vorthic formation like a living thing, its hull shifting and flowing to avoid incoming fire. Weapons that should have destroyed it passed harmlessly through spaces where the ship had been moments before. The Vorthic ships fired everything they had: energy beams, missile swarms, gravity bombs, and weapons that existed in dimensions human science could not measure. None of it mattered. The ironclad dawn moved through the attack like water flowing around stones. Then, Lucas began to fight back. The ship's weapons were not conventional energy beams or explosive missiles. They were manifestations of physical laws meant to serve human will. Reality itself became a weapon in his hands. The first Vorthic ship simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was there, firing desperately at the dancing human vessel. The next moment, space was empty where it had been. The atoms that had comprised its hull, crew, and weapons were scattered across several light years of space. The second ship found its gravity reversed. It began falling upward, accelerating toward the system star at ever-increasing velocity. Its crew transmitted frantic distress calls as their own engines became useless against forces they could not understand. Lucas felt no mercy for the aliens. Through his enhanced senses, he could perceive the Vorthic consciousness. They were hive-minded, creatures who saw other species as nothing more than resources to be consumed. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds, harvested billions of lives, and felt no more emotion about it than humans felt about harvesting wheat. The remaining Vorthic ships tried to retreat, but space itself seemed to be working against them. Their hyperspace drives failed to engage. Their navigation systems reported impossible readings. The ironclad dawn had somehow trapped them in normal space, forcing them to face the consequences of their actions. One by one, the alien vessels fell to weapons that defied comprehension. Some were frozen in time, their crews experiencing eternity. In a single moment, others were translated into parallel dimensions where the laws of physics operated differently. The lucky ones were simply destroyed by forces that unmade their atomic structure. But the Vorthic had one final gambit. The flagship, recognizing that conventional victory was impossible, began charging a weapon that Lucas had not seen before. Through his enhanced perception, he could see reality beginning to tear around the device. It was some kind of dimensional ripper designed to erase entire regions of spacetime. "That weapon will destroy New Haven along with us," Shepard warned. "They prefer mutual annihilation to defeat." Lucas felt the weight of 2 million lives pressing against his consciousness. The Vorthic weapon would indeed destroy the planet, but it would take several minutes to charge fully. He had time for one final gambit of his own. The ironclad dawn began to change. Its hull flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself into configurations that hurt to look at directly. The ship was becoming something that existed partially outside normal spacetime, spreading across dimensions that human language had no words for. When the Vorthic weapon fired, reality screamed. A section of space the size of a moon simply vanished, leaving behind a wound in the universe itself. But the ironclad dawn was no longer entirely present in normal space. The weapon passed through it like sunlight through mist. Lucas felt the dimensional ripper's energy and turned it back on its creators. The Vorthic flagship found itself caught in its own weapon, experiencing the same fate it had intended for. New Haven. The massive vessel was erased from existence, so completely that even its memory seemed to fade from the universe. The remaining Vorthic ships, seeing their flagship destroyed by its own ultimate weapon, finally managed to break free from whatever was trapping them in normal space. They fled toward the edge of the system, transmitting warnings about the ghost ship and its impossible captain. Lucas let them go. Let them carry word back to their empire that humanity was no longer helpless prey. Let them spread fear among the stars about the species that could turn physics itself into a weapon. As the ironclad dawn settled into orbit around New Haven, Lucas felt the weight of what he had become. He was no longer Lucas Bennett, Cyberwright of New Haven Colony. He was something new, something that bridged the gap between human and machine, organic and artificial, possible and impossible. Through the ship's communication system, he heard cheers from the planet below. 2 million voices raised in celebration of their salvation. But Lucas felt strangely disconnected from their joy. His transformation had saved them, but it had also separated him from them in ways that could never be undone. He was humanity's guardian now, but he was no longer entirely human himself. The price of victory had been his own transformation into something that could protect his species from threats they could never imagine. It was a burden he would carry among the stars, a responsibility that would define the rest of his existence. The battle was won, but Lucas Bennett's human life was over. What remained was something greater and more terrible, a bridge between worlds that would shape humanity's future among the stars. 3 months after the Battle of New Haven, Lucas Bennett stood on the observation deck of the ironclad Dawn and watched human space transform before his eyes. He no longer needed to breathe or eat, sustained entirely by the ship's biomechanical systems. His body had become something beautiful and alien, covered in patterns of living circuitry that pulsed with soft light. His eyes reflected the depths of space itself, and his voice carried harmonics that could communicate across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Below him, the shipyards of New Haven worked around the clock to build humanity's new fleet. The designs were based on the ironclad Dawn's hybrid technology, but each vessel would be smaller and more specialized. They called them navigator ships, vessels that required a human pilot to merge with their consciousness in order to function. PROPERLY Dr. Kate Sullivan had established the Navigator Training Center in orbit around New Haven. Hundreds of volunteers came forward, mostly Cyberites and other technicians who understood the risks involved. Not all of them survived the integration process. Those who did emerged as something more than human, forever changed by their bond with living ships. Casey Rodriguez had been the first successful candidate after Lucas. Her ship, the Starfire, was a sleek vessel designed for reconnaissance and rapid strike missions. She retained more of her human appearance than Lucas, but her eyes now glowed with internal light, and her skin showed traces of the biomechanical patterns that marked all navigators. Danny Walsh chose to remain purely human, serving as the chief engineer for the Navigator program. He designed the integration chambers and developed the procedures that allowed humans to safely merge with ship consciousness. His work saved countless lives and made the Navigator cores possible. The first squadron is ready for deployment, Shepard announced through their shared consciousness. The ship's II had evolved as well, becoming something that was no longer entirely artificial. It was part of Lucas now, just as he was part of it. Lucas watched through the ship's sensors. as 12 navigator vessels formed up in perfect formation. Each ship was unique, its hull shaped by the personality and needs of its human partner. Some were angular and aggressive, designed for combat. Others were smooth and elegant, built for exploration and diplomacy. All of them pulsed with the strange life that came from the merger of human consciousness and alien technology. "The Galactic Council has requested a meeting," Lucas said, reviewing the latest diplomatic communications. "They want to understand what humanity has become." The Galactic Council represented the older species of the galaxy, civilizations that had achieved interstellar travel thousands of years before humans left Earth. They had watched humanity's expansion with mild interest, seeing them as another young species that would either destroy itself or eventually join the community of starfaring races. The defeat of the Vorthic hegemony had changed everything. Those 17 ships had represented one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. Their destruction by a single human vessel had sent shockwaves throughout known space. Every major power wanted to understand how humanity had achieved such impossible victory. "They fear us now," Shepard observed. "They see us as a potential threat to the established order." Lucas considered this. The Galactic Council species had achieved stability by accepting limitations. They built ships according to understood principles, used weapons that followed known laws of physics, and conducted warfare within predictable boundaries. The ironclad dawn represented something that transcended those limitations entirely. "Fear can lead to cooperation or conflict," Lucas replied. "We must ensure it leads to the former." A communication came through from Helen Morrison, who had been elected as New Haven's representative to the emerging human government. The colonies were organizing themselves into something greater, a federation that could coordinate the navigator corps and represent humanity's interests on a galactic scale. "Lucas, the council delegation has arrived. They're requesting permission to board your ship." Through his enhanced senses, Lucas could perceive the alien vessels approaching. There were 7 ships representing the major council races. Each was a masterpiece of conventional engineering, beautiful in its own way, but limited by the boundaries of traditional physics. "Permission granted," Lucas replied. "But they should understand that this ship is not just a vessel. It is a living entity. They are entering the body of something that exists beyond their comprehension." The alien delegates came aboard through specially prepared airlocks. Lucas had learned to appear more human when necessary, suppressing the more obvious signs of his transformation. But he could not hide the fact that he was no longer entirely the same species as those he protected. The council delegation was led by Ambassador Kethfer, a tall being whose crystalline body reflected light in complex patterns. Her species, the Gelinari, were among the oldest in the galaxy and served as mediators between younger races. "Navigator Bennett," she said, using the title humans had given to their ship-bonded pilots. "We come seeking understanding. Your victory over the Vorthic fleet has implications that extend far beyond human space." Lucas gestured for the delegates to follow him to the ship's central conference chamber. As they walked through the corridors, he could sense their amazement at what they saw. The walls pulsed with organic life. Biomechanical systems grew like neural networks throughout the ship. Everything was alive, thinking, evolving. "The ironclad dawn is not just a ship," Lucas explained. "It is a synthesis of human creativity, alien technology, and artificial intelligence. We call it a living vessel, but that does not capture its true nature." Ambassador Kethvar paused to examine a section of wall where biomechanical tendrils formed complex patterns. "This technology. We have theories about such things, but no species has ever achieved practical application." "How did humans accomplish what we considered impossible?" "By being willing to change," Lucas replied. "Your species achieved interstellar travel by mastering existing principles. Humans achieved it by refusing to accept limitations. When we encountered alien technology we did not understand, we did not try to reverse engineer it. We integrated with it. The conference chamber was a perfect sphere where delegates could float in zero gravity or stand on any surface as they chose. Lucas took his position at the center, his transformed body serving as a living interface between the ship's consciousness and his guests. "The question before us," said Ambassador Kethver, "is whether humanity represents an opportunity or a threat to galactic stability. Your navigator course possesses capabilities that could upset the balance of power that has kept peace for millennia." Lucas understood her concern. The established order of the galaxy was built on predictable limitations. Every species knew what was possible and what was not. The existence of living ships that could bend reality itself threatened that certainty. "We do not seek conquest," Lucas assured her, "but we will not accept extinction either. Humanity has faced the Vorthic threat that your council chose to ignore. We developed the navigator cores because conventional weapons were insufficient to protect our worlds. And now?" asked another delegate, this one representing the machine intelligence, collective known as the Nexus. "Now that you have this power, what will you do with it?" Lucas felt the weight of that question pressing against his expanded consciousness. The navigator cores was still small, perhaps 50 ships scattered across human space. But each vessel represented capabilities that could reshape the galaxy. The power to manipulate space-time, to exist partially outside normal reality, to turn physics itself into a weapon. "We will protect what is ours," he said finally. "We will explore what lies beyond known space. We will grow and change as we always have. But we will also serve as guardians against threats that conventional forces cannot handle, such as the Vorthic," Ambassador Kethver observed. "The Vorthic were only the beginning," Lucas replied. "My ship's sensors had detected signals from beyond the galactic rim. There are older things out there, entities that predate even your civilizations. They stir in the darkness between galaxies, and they are beginning to take notice of our activities." Here, the alien delegates exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a complex web of quantum entanglement and electromagnetic signals. They were afraid, Lucas realized. The Galactic Council's greatest fear was not humanity's power, but the implications of that power. If humans had found it necessary to transcend conventional limitations, what did that say about the threats they faced? "You offer partnership?" Ambassador Kethver asked. "We offer evolution," Lucas corrected. "The galaxy is changing whether we acknowledge it or not. The choice is between changing with it or being left behind." Over the following hours, Lucas shared what the ironclad Dawn had learned during its century of dreaming. Images from the ship's long-range sensors showed vast structures moving in the void between galaxies. Ancient intelligences that had been dormant for millions of years were beginning to wake. The threats facing galactic civilization were beyond anything the Council had imagined. When the delegation finally departed, they carried with them an offer of cooperation and a warning of what lay ahead. Some Council species would choose to work with humanity, adapting their technology, and